Yeah, this one took us 8 years to get it made. Wow. So from a, at first we thought we couldn't make it for less than like 35 million, and we were at a studio, and then it fell apart, and then we said, okay, we'll rebuild it for less, and then we rebuilt it for less, and then it fell apart again, and then it fell apart again, and then like actually once we were about to leave the next day for Thailand to shoot it, the actors were on their way, the locations were booked, the crew was booked. And the day before we got on the flight, the plug got pulled, and it was one of those like, suddenly the next year's worth of income just evaporates, and you just don't know what to do. And it was one of those dark moments, and we ended up rebuilding it even smaller, and got on a plane the next year. But we'll never have goodbye dinners. Like we kept doing goodbye dinners and then not leaving, and so yeah, we'll never do that again.
Wow! And with the casting, there's some really interesting things going on. I mean, you have actors that are not primarily known for, but often known for comedy roles, as the couple, and then Pierce Brosnan, who, of course, anytime we see him in a geopolitical setting, it's hard not to think of his days on Her Majesty's Secret Service. So that background gives you a little extra something to play with, doesn't it?
It does. It was fun playing with people's preconceptions with that. Like one of our touchstone films was Costa Gavras' Missing, which I just think is one of the greatest movies ever made. And the choice of like Jack Lemmon in a situation like this, it's just such a different way to see an event like that. It really makes it feel more real somehow. And to put Owen in this, like people kept asking us like, are you going to give him a crew cut, make him real tough? And we're like, no. We want the Owen from Marley and Me in this situation, and it was great. It was great. You like he's so warm, and like you really believe him as a dad, and it's really shocking when you see him have to experience and even partake in violence.
Yeah. I'm glad you didn't put the dog in it, because people would have got mad.
Yeah,
they would have really got mad. Speaking of geopolitical things, I mean, anytime we see Americans abroad in peril. And in settings that are horrific, people are going to look for messaging. They're going to add their own probably as well. Does that make this an extra sensitive venture, or is that why you go in this direction in the first place?
It does. It's interesting how, I was reading, like 6 months ago, I was reading Capra's autobiography, and he was saying, and this is like back in the 50s when he was writing this, and he was saying, it's hard to have a bad guy who's not just insane, because if you have a bad guy that's a lawyer, all of a sudden all the lawyers get mad at you. And if you have a bad, like, and I found, it really interesting that, if you put an American family in a situation abroad, it's true. I've realized a lot more people, read into the messaging of that, or the, people, I got a question a lot of, is it, I don't know, is it insensitive to focus on an American family in a foreign crisis, but not the people in the crisis, around them in the crisis? And I keep thinking like, in Titanic, like you're with Leo and Kate Winslet, but it doesn't mean you don't care about everyone else. But that there has to be a focus to your movie, and it's hard not to see the world in an American perspective, being an American and an American filmmaker.
Yeah, especially if there's no iceberg, because then,
exactly.
that creates a lot of problems. And as far as that, over that period of time, since it was a protracted period of time, 8 years, as you became more sensitive to those kinds of issues, did the story change? Did the characters change? Were there any modulations as events in the real world unfolded that may have had parallels?
Well, it's interesting. We wrote this initially before Arab Spring, and we used to have to do a lot of exposition. Like, people would read the script and say, "Could something like this really happen?" And so we had a whole lot of exposition early in the movie. And then Arab Spring happened. There was an unfortunate thing in the Taj Mahal Hotel in India, and there's a whole series of events that have happened where now people didn't question, and we took a lot of the exposition back out, because it's a different world now where this seems a lot more possible.
Yeah. And with the children, anytime there's children in peril in a film, I and a lot of people are of the mind that there's an extra responsibility for the filmmakers to make sure that they're presenting this in a way that's responsible, or at least in tune what they mean to say. Is that the type of conversations that you guys had? And what were some of the sensibilities that came to bear on that?
Well, a lot of, we really wanted it not to feel like icky that kids were there. So we made a lot of efforts to make sure to write, when Annie's attacked, we make sure to write them in a place where they can't really see what's happening, and we cut back to see that they are not watching, or we kept getting pressure actually in the development stage to 2 kids, that's so much money. Can't you just have 1 kid? Can't you have a teenager? It's like, no, that was a big challenge for getting this thing made. And we kept saying, with 2 kids, they can be together. With 1 kid, they always need to be in the mix. With 2 kids, they can be together and be okay at moments. Like, you can actually spend, you can actually have them, they're more a part of the story, but in a way they're less a part too, because they can sort of take care of each other. And Drew and I, Drew said sorry he couldn't be here today, but
your brother,
my brother and I, we co-write together. He produced, I directed, and so we're built in that duality mindset. So it just that made sense to us. But there was a lot of things that we wanted to make sure that you don't get to the end of the movie and go like, well, great, they survived, but those kids are, they're really going to be messed up, which they, I'm sure they'll have some issues to deal with for sure. But, that was part of it, we got some pressure to cut the hospital scene in the script stage, and we kept saying that's where they're going to be okay. Like, that's the point. That's the, the reason, for us, sort of going back to the political thing, for us, we really wanted this to be a movie about a family, and a movie about getting through all the crazy obstacles you go through as a family, and the traumas and the things that hopefully bind you more together. That's really, that was our focus. Originally we had in the script, it was originally written as Cambodia as the place they're going, and we kept getting the question, could this happen in Cambodia? Is the Khmer Rouge still around? Is that and we started going okay, that's not the movie we're making. We're not trying to make a political statement on Cambodia, or don't ever go to Cambodia. We didn't want that to be the takeaway. We wanted to remain focused on the family. So we ended up taking out the name or any mention of the country in that attempt. And so
yeah. And then one last thing, by doing that, by subtracting political themes or messaging, what is it that you would circle, just in a few words maybe, as being the core message or theme that you mentioned? Family. I imagine that would be part of it.
Yeah, I mean, the connection of family, and the there are those moments where something crazy happens, and you get that phone call in the middle of the day, and suddenly your life is different, and I really feel at those moments, when you bind together as a family, we had, I guess 15 years ago now, my dad got in a plane crash, and he's fine now. But it was really touch and go. He broke his skull in 3 places, and I was living in LA, and Drew was in New York, and everyone was there. In 12 hours, we were all bedside, and he crashed in North Dakota, and we were suddenly stuck in North Dakota for 6 weeks, at his bedside. And it was amazing how nothing, all these things I was caught up in here, and Drew was caught up, none of it mattered. Suddenly this was all that was important. And we keep talking about how do you capture that? How do you capture that in film? That moment of, you're dealing with the noise and the emails and all this stuff, and suddenly it all drops away, and you're just there with your family. And so really we wanted to create that kind of that atmosphere in a thriller.